feelings of stress. When your symptoms start to appear, or if they haven't appeared yet, but this can lead to physical symptoms. So again, back to the anxiety with the heart racing, the sweaty palms, the rapid breathing. Sleep disturbances. So when you experience chronic pain, it can impact your ability to have a good night's rest. I can remember myself, so I am an endo survivor, disclosure there, and not being able to sleep deeply because of my menstrual cycle, because of course you don't want to soil the bed. And then of course that creates a whole set of other things that you have to deal with if you do that, right? And so you don't sleep, you don't have a good night's rest, and you have constantly having to worry if, again, if your cycle is going to be too heavy that it impacts other things within your life. Therefore, not sleeping well leads to an increase in anxiety and depressive symptoms. The social isolation. So the chronic pain, the fatigue, because of course, if you are bleeding every day heavily for 7 to 10 days, for some women, it's even longer, you can imagine how depleted you're going to feel. Low energy, very tired all the time, and generally feeling overwhelmed. It can cause women to isolate themselves because, again, you may feel that this is just happening to me. It's not happening to anybody else, because I haven't heard any of my friend groups talking about this. I haven't been hearing anybody at work talking about this. So this is just only happening to me, right? And then as well as having to physically and mentally prepare for outings. This can leave one feeling quite drained and lead to a person to just stay inside. Because again, if you have to live your life around your cycle, it can become hard. So for instance, if I can give some practical examples, when you go out, you have to make sure that you have maybe a change of underwear, maybe a change of bottom in terms of a pants or a skirt, or if you're just going to change a dress altogether, whether you have enough sanitary napkins with you or tampons, if that's what you prefer to use. And then, of course, then you have to be aware of where are all the bathrooms when you get to wherever you're going. Do the bathrooms have adequate toilet paper? Do you walk with your own? So those are just some really practical things that women dealing with endometriosis have to grapple with. And so hence the social isolation, because it's too much. So why bother? Just stay home. Infertility. So difficulty being able to conceive can lead to feelings of inadequacy. So remember, as women, at least I know within the Caribbean for sure, we've been taught or socialized to believe that as women, we get married, we have children, we have our career, and it pretty much goes like that. So we've been sold this narrative from the time we can remember, right? So when we have difficulty conceiving, you can imagine the feelings that can come up as a result of that, right? So feelings of inadequacy, because again, I'm less than a woman because I can't have children. That has been the concept. I know in the Caribbean, especially, and I'm always going to speak to the Caribbean because this is where I live, we may have people within our circles, we may have outsiders as well within our environment that not necessarily want to hurt or harm, but there's always the question, okay, you've been married for XYZ amount of years, or you've had a partner for XYZ amount of years, where are the babies? And again, that's not meant to harm or hurt you, but it does, because you're already feeling inadequate as a woman because you can't conceive, but then you're constantly reminded of it. And again, these feelings of inadequacy can lead to higher increases of anxiety and depressive symptoms. Body image. Many women struggle with negative body image due to pain. So feeling unlovable, feeling inadequate again. When you see a woman who can sometimes look pregnant, who is not pregnant, that can be because of the bloating, the excessive bloating that a woman goes through on a menstrual cycle, who has fibroids, who has endometriosis. So you can look like you're pregnant, but you're not. And so then when people come up to you and say, congratulations, you're going to feel even more unlovable, more inadequate, because again, this is a physical representation or manifestation of something that I have no control over and something that I really can't do, right? So those feeling bloated, that can also impact your emotional well-being. Relationship problems. Endometriosis is not just a female problem. It's a family problem. It's a societal problem because, again, how we feel and how we deal with endometriosis, it impacts not just us individually, it impacts our external environment as well, right? So this condition is not for the faint of heart. Trust me, it's not for the faint of heart. It takes a village and can put a strain on any emotional connection because a woman may not want to be intimate due to painful sex or body image. Work problems. I think in the presentation that was done before, we spoke again about some women who cannot hold down full-time jobs because of the amount of pain that they're in. Some women can barely get out of bed sometimes, right? So again, the village. So if you work within an organization that does not understand this condition, you may be further alienated and isolated. Being away from work for long or frequent periods can be difficult to maintain employment. So I hope that everybody's thinking about the things that women grapple with as it relates to this disease. Trauma and endometriosis. So while I was preparing this presentation, I did some research and I came across a study which I will read about, done in the UK, where the researchers investigated the association between traumatic experiences such as childhood maltreatment, sexual assault, and violent crime, and endometriosis using statistical models that accounted for age, socioeconomic status, and ancestry. The study found that women with endometriosis were significantly more likely to report traumatic experiences compared to those without the condition. Contact traumas, including physical and sexual abuse had the strongest association. So, for instance, women who experienced childhood maltreatment or interpersonal trauma had higher odds of developing endometriosis than those who had never faced such events. These associations remain significant even after adjusting for confounding factors such as age and socioeconomic background. And so this study found that women with endometriosis were significantly more likely to report traumatic experiences compared to those without the condition. So let's see. So these associations remain significant. So further analysis showed that endometriosis was particularly linked to specific trauma types, so including childhood abuse, intimate partner violence, and experiences of severe emotional distress. Women who reported multiple traumatic events were at even higher risk, indicating a possible cumulative effect of trauma exposure on disease development. Women with endometriosis were found to have increased odds of experiencing stress-related conditions such as anxiety and depression, further reinforcing the connection between mental health and endometriosis. So one hypothesis is that trauma might trigger or exacerbate chronic inflammation and disrupt hormonal balance, potentially leading to the development of worsening endometriosis. So again, we may be predisposed to certain conditions that can help to contribute to endometriosis, but if you have endometriosis, stress and chronic stress can help to exacerbate the condition and therefore lead to the severity of the pain. Because of course, inflammation then develops, hormonal imbalances will be off, and that leads to more pain. So let's take a look at healthcare related stress. Anyone that's had endometriosis may have had between, I'm just gonna approximate it here, between 2 to possibly 4 or 5 surgeries, right? And those are the ones with the severe cases. So stressful medical procedures or diagnostic processes can contribute to overall stress, which in turn might affect the body's hormonal balance and immune system, and possibly exacerbating endometriosis symptoms. So to help to combat this with the organization that I work with, so like I said, I work with the Regional Endometriosis Center within Barbados, we make sure that our women's spouses are given counseling sessions. So when we recognize that a woman has been seen by the doctor, they've recognized that they have endometriosis, and we'll get a bit into the stages or some of the stages of endo. The family is brought in if the female has a family, and family again does not necessarily mean blood. Family can look like, you know, friends who come and support the person. There's been a correlation found between the stages of endometriosis and stress levels. So stage 1 is minimal, so few superficial implants, little or no scar tissue, and mild adhesions. Stage 2 is mild, so deeper implants and some more lesions. Stage 3, moderate, so there are many implants, get small chocolate cysts is what they call them on one or both of the ovaries, and you still get adhesions. And stage 4 is severe. So many deep implants, large cysts on one or both ovaries, and many dense adhesions. And the experience of not being heard or believed by healthcare providers. And remember, I mentioned that probably in my first slide, where you have healthcare professionals who I'm not sure, I don't know if they intend to be dismissive, but women can feel as though they're being dismissed by because they're not believed. It can lead to feelings of frustration, inadequacy, or a sense of being invalidated, and can also contribute to healthcare related stress, which could have an impact on the physical and mental well-being of individuals with endometriosis. So how do we overcome the feeling of being broken? And I put broken in inverted commas because we are not broken and we are not burdens to people, but that is how we feel at times, right? So each day with this disease will look different. And I always tell my clients that take it one day at a time. Each day is going to look different. For some, like I said before, it is something that you live with every single day. For some, it comes and goes. So you might get one menstrual cycle where it's not so bad, and then the next menstrual cycle is full on again, right? So some days you might feel as though your body is betraying you. That is a real fact. You know, you may ask the questions, why can't I be normal? Some days you might feel as though you're being punished for something. It can be scary, exhausting, and out of control. And on those days where you're feeling as though, you know, you're overwhelmed, as though this disease is just taking over your life, see if there's someone that you can reach out to. Is there a family member? Is there a friend? Is there someone that you can talk to where you can just vent about what you're feeling? You don't want any advice, but you just want that shoulder to lean on where you can talk to someone. Social media can be good, but it can also be bad, right? And it can be triggering. So not bad necessarily, but triggering. And so because you can fall down that rabbit hole of comparing your life. So I am at this age and this is where I'm at, but somebody else is the same age and they're way down the road, right? And that can cause you to spiral. So it's to remember that you are human. You are not the same as anyone else. You are unique and you were beautifully made, right? And so it's to be gentle with yourself. It's to maybe take a break off social media for a little bit so that then you don't feel as though you are being compared or you are comparing to everyone else. Laughing when you can. Sometimes laughter is the best medicine, huh? Sometimes when we go through things that are completely insane, what we call insane, we have to laugh sometimes. And so if it is that you can find a comedy show to watch, for example, or if it is that you have friends who will continuously joke and make you laugh, be surrounded by them. Positively affirm yourself. Filling yourself with nurturing thoughts can be helpful. So while you may be thinking, I am broken and need to be fixed, maybe rephrasing that and saying instead, I am me and I am perfect as I am. Remind yourself that you are a warrior and this illness is not your fault. Be gentle with yourself. And so this is the last slide. And we're going to take a look at some psychological strategies for managing stress and uncertainty. So again, support groups simply means talking with individuals who are going through the same thing as you, or those who you find are as a source of comfort and a safe space, right? Talking about what you're going through and some of the things that might help, simply sharing is something that is grossly underestimated. Like I said, I think we need to do more talking. We are doing a lot more than we were doing in the past, but there's still some people, when you say the term endometriosis, they're going to ask you, what is that, right? So I think we still have to do more in terms of talking. Relaxation techniques. So meditation, deep breathing, and mindfulness. That is often helpful so that when you want to try to get away from the pain in terms of this is all I'm thinking about all the time, sometimes people can do some meditation. So whether it is you light some candles, that would give off that calming feeling and do some meditation and deep breathing. Pelvic floor exercises, including Kegels and related movements, can help improve muscle tone and control, potentially reducing endometriosis-related pain by targeting the pelvic floor muscles. And I know that we have somebody in Barbados that deals a lot with that, Jasmine Eveling, and she was I think she still is one of the members of our endometriosis movement here, but she's also the founder of Mindful Movement on Instagram. And then healthy lifestyle choices. So prioritizing sleep when you can. Again, you have to take care of yourself by being gentle with yourself. And sometimes that means sleeping. Yes, as women, we're always taught to get up and go. But at some points, we have to understand and recognize that we're human too, right? And that means that we have to take care of ourselves. We can't depend on anybody else to do that for us. And so sometimes that means prioritizing getting some rest instead of getting up and cleaning the house, for example, or washing clothes. If you can order in food, for instance, that's a way of taking care of yourself. Exercise as well is helpful, but again, it depends on the person. When you're going through a flare up, exercise is not something that is really helpful, unless, of course, you want to go outside and go for a walk. And if you can do short walking stints, that is helpful. And pain management strategies that would include going to a medical doctor and seeing if medication can help to improve your quality of life. And I think that's it from me. Yes, and I had that in questions, but we'll get to the questions at the end of the presentation. So I will stop sharing. There we go.
Thank you so much, Brenda. This was so informative, and I just wanted to reiterate a few things that you said, specifically the point you made about women with endometriosis having to live around their cycle and how that can be such a stress and a burden on their everyday lives. And it really leads to them self-isolating because it's so difficult to have to go out and enjoy life and live and socialize because you have to be, like you said, aware of bathrooms and is there sufficient toilet paper. And women tend to feel unloved and they feel inadequate, and these things materialize in their relationships with their family, with their friends, in their romantic relationships. And there's the issue of work policies not being inclusive, women having to fight with their own bodies, but also having to fight with their employers and having to fight with the people around them to help to get them to understand the issues that they're suffering with and to be accommodative of them. And most times we don't get that support, and we have to find other means to be able to work with our health issues. But you also provided some strategies on how we can cope in terms of being able to laugh, taking a break from social media so we're not constantly comparing ourselves with other people, taking care of ourselves, talking to each other, and exercising, and incorporating methods and strategies to care for our mental health and care for our bodies at the same time. So thank you so much for your contribution. And now we'll move on to Mrs. Natalie Green. Natalie is an integrative psychosexual and relationship therapist based in Essex, working with individuals and couples both online and in person. With experience in both the NHS and private practice, she supports people seeking to explore intimacy, strengthen relationships, and build self-connection in ways that are not only healing, but truly transformative. Rooted in the understanding that well-being is influenced by the intricate interplay of biological, psychological, and social factors, her practice, LTAS, Let's Talk About Sex, extends beyond conventional therapy modalities. The practice recognizes the value of each client's perspective and personal context, including their cultural background, spiritual beliefs, and physical health, as well as the impact these have on shaping an individual's journey towards wholeness. By using creative and personalized tools to help build intimacy and navigate complex emotions, clients are supported in creating a delicate balance of thought, feeling, and action, working towards true authenticity and self-acceptance. Natalie, over to you. We look forward to your very, very, very informative contribution. Oh, I'm sorry. I think you're on mute.
I am. There I was talking away. Thanks, Beverly. I just wanted to say thank you so much for the introduction, and thank you, Brenda, for shedding some really useful light on endometriosis, and for April as well. I'm going to look at a slightly different aspect, and that is the impact on more than just the body, the impact that is external and internal to ourselves. And I've called this more than pain. I say silent, although those who have suffered, like me, I'm an endo warrior. An endo survivor, I want to say, the struggle is never silent and the pain is never silent. But endometriosis has a massive effect on our intimate lives and on our mental health, as we have already heard. So I just want to look at that today, understanding the unseen and reclaiming the most intimate parts of us. You've already introduced me, so I'm not going to go through my own credentials again, but I just want to let us know that we can reclaim our body and we can rebuild our connection, as hard as that may sound. For those people who suffered and struggled with endometriosis, life can be very difficult. And, you know, nobody talks about these aspects of endometriosis. It's one thing, especially in Caribbean cultures, where we're so sex positive and sex negative at the same time. We've got this weird conflict that we and you know, sort of relationship that we have with sex and intimacy, where we're very open about it and we sing about it and we dance about it and it's part of our culture, but actually we're also simultaneously quite closed about it, and nobody actually talks about the reality of the struggle that in, you know, diseases and conditions like endometriosis can present. So it's not just a medical condition. It has an emotional, relational, and embodied experience. It really is a whole being fight. We've already been through what endometriosis is, so I'm not going to go through it again, but just to let you know that it can affect so much more than just our body. It really does affect our relationships in major ways. And I just want to share a little bit of that with you. And I want to leave this with you, because one of the biggest things that we hear in society is that it's just a period. It's just a period. And, oh, you know, everybody has painful periods. Not everybody has painful periods. Periods are not supposed to be painful. I always tell my clients about the difference between something being common and normal. I don't like the word normal, so I'm going to use air quotes for that. The fact that something is common, the fact that a lot of people have it, doesn't mean that it's normal or right. And I want us to really start shifting our language and vocabulary about this only a period. You know, everybody's period is different. And so it's not only a period. And I want to validate those people who have struggled, those people who have struggled silently and, you know, openly, and to try to explain that it's not just a period, that, you know, not only are you bleeding for several days on end, but your periods are very heavy, they're very painful. They don't feel normal to you. It might be your common, it might be your version of what you experience every month, but it doesn't mean that it's a natural part of life, for the pain that is. We now know that periods are not supposed to be painful, but of course, many of us have a completely different real life and lived experience. It is a whole body fight. Endometriosis has a socio-cultural and economic aspect. And I want to touch on the cultural, because it's a really important part for us as people in the Caribbean, where, you know, the attitude is that you're a woman, you get over it. It's a period, get over it. Or, you know, I mean, in St. Lucia, people will say, Gassa, she just have a period and she's behaving, you know, like it's the end of the world. And we often take our cultural reality for granted in the argument and the debate. We don't have we don't have a lot of access. Maybe it's changing now, and I haven't lived in St. Lucia for a long time, although I do go home several times a year, but we don't have as much access to healthcare and to the finances to be able to manage our own healthcare and personal care that we do in countries like the US and Canada and the UK and maybe even other Caribbean countries. We don't have the awareness in our intergenerational context. We don't have the awareness culturally to support medical conditions. Everything is very stigmatized. Everything is you know, shunned. Everything is very brandished and tarnished with sort of a dark color. And, you know, the fact that Iyanola and other organizations like this, Iyanola Wombmanhood, exist, for me, it's an amazing thing. And if I'm honest and oversharing, you know, Brenda, you spoke about that as well, over disclosure. It's sometimes frustrating for me, because I went through endometriosis for so many years. at a time when people were not talking about endometriosis. And I remember, you know, the first time I never ever saw a social media post about endometriosis in the UK, I got in touch and I tried to become an endo warrior then. That was over 10 years ago, and wasn't listened to. And then you look at it now and it seems to be so spoken about. And there is a conflict personally for women who think, well, you know, because this person is a social media star or an influencer or a TV star, they can talk about menopause, they can talk about endometriosis, and everybody takes them seriously, but nobody takes me seriously. And that's part of our ingrained cultural heritage, that nobody takes me seriously. And I think that it's time for us to break the stigma, and I think that's happening now. So it's important for us to recognize that endometriosis has a sociocultural and economic impact. Affordability to healthcare is an issue. We don't have access. Not every Caribbean country has the access to the right tools. Operations are expensive. You've already heard Brenda talk about the number of surgeries that people have to go through just to get diagnosed. It's a lot. It's a lot to deal with. And there's a lot of misdiagnosis and a lot of minimized and misunderstood narratives around endometriosis. There are no visible markers. You know, endometriosis is the hidden disability, if you will. You know, people now say that not every disability is visible. We don't wear it as a badge unless we have a little yellow "I have endo" badge. And even that is an issue. It really is an emotional weight. It really does carry that weight to it. So here are some of the issues with endometriosis, as Brenda has already described. Some of them, I just want to talk specifically about the impact on libido, which is your sexual drive or desire, and sexual function, because endometriosis has a huge impact and can have a huge impact on sexual function and libido. One of the first questions that is normally asked in a medical discussion about endometriosis is whether you have pain on intercourse. And not every woman with endometriosis experiences painful sexual intercourse. And so this is one of the very often spoken about, one of the well-known indicators, but it's not a blanket. It's not normal for everyone to experience pain during intercourse. There is also a cultural aspect of this where somehow we're educated to believe that sex should and is and can be painful. Sex shouldn't be painful. This is another challenge that we have and another stigma that we need to break down. Sex should not be painful. If sex is painful, we need to think about what's happening for us. And there are lots of reasons why, you know, sex can be painful, but often this is ignored because we are cultured. Again, we're cultured to believe that if it's painful, it's good. If it's painful, it means that he's very big, and that means that our man is, you know, very manly and very strong. So that means that we should, and you know, there's also a cultural aspect that says if we can't take the pain, then we're not doing it right. If we can't take the pain, we're not woman enough. And these are parts of our culture that we need to break down and dismantle because they're just so wrong. So here are some of the impacts. There is pain and a fear response that is innate to chronic pelvic pain. The first part is pain. We know we have pain, and we also have anticipatory pain. The anticipation that it's going to be painful, the knowledge that if I am in this position or if I'm doing this, I'm going to experience pain, actually increases our experience of pain because we have an anticipated sense of pain. So this is a massive problem that we have. And it's hard then to distinguish between whether it's painful all the time or I'm just anticipating pain, and so therefore sex is painful. The nervous system goes into complete hypervigilance. We're constantly thinking, should I do this? Should I get close to my partner? Should I start kissing? Should I start caressing? So should I start making out? Because I know that it's going to lead to penetration. And this is a whole other narrative that I'll come to in a minute. And I don't want penetration because penetration is going to be painful. And I would prefer to just not do it at all. Or I'm going to do it and grin and bear it, which is even more dangerous in some instances because we're reinforcing these negative stereotypes within our system. And our body keeps memory of these things. So this is a major impact of chronic pain, especially with conditions like endometriosis. Another aspect is our hormonal imbalances and therefore the loss of libido. A massive issue with conditions like endometriosis, fibroids, PCOS, is that we have huge fluctuations between estrogen and progesterone, and this reduces our sexual drive. It causes things like vaginal dryness, and it can interfere with our ability to orgasm and cause something called anorgasmia, which is the inability to orgasm. And I mean, this is a mouthful in itself. There is so much here that people don't often talk about. And it can be very embarrassing for women to explain, or whether even they understand themselves, why they're dry. why their vaginas are dry, why their vulvas are dry, why they experience things like vulvodynia, where the vulva is painful. I'm just going to reach off camera so I can grab a little teaching aid. I didn't think that I would need it. Bear with me 1 second. My apologies. I'm just gonna grab my little vulva puppet here. So vulvodynia affects the vulva. This is a vulva. For those people who don't know, we all call it the vagina or the coochie or the whatever we want to call it, but it's actually called a vulva. The vagina is actually only the opening that the penis goes into, the blood comes out of, or the baby comes out of. And we can experience pain in all parts of our vulva, not just internally. And vaginal dryness that is caused by hormonal imbalances leads to a lot of painful sexual conditions that are not just internal. And this is something that we don't talk about because, I know in St. Lucia, we've got that great song that I love by a wonderful friend of mine, Spit Pon It. We love it. We love to hate it. We have a lot to say about it. And, people don't want to talk about using lube. If you say to a guy, if you say to your partner, I need you lube, he looks at you like something is wrong. I mean, if you're unlucky, that is. And so again, we have the cultural aspect of this. And fluctuations in estrogen and progesterone cause other issues like acne, again, like fatigue. There are so many other issues that these fluctuations and these hormonal imbalances cause. Brenda has already spoken about them. Symptoms such as similar to perimenopause and menopause symptoms, hot flushes and sweats, things like that. There are treatments such as hormonal therapy. I know one of the ones that doctors like to reach for are the hormonal coils or the pills. Actually, there's a lot of scientific research that suggests that these things don't actually help. And there are some anecdotal suggestions that they actually can make things worse for some people. I just want to be careful how I say that. For some people they do work. For some people they don't work. For some people they make things worse. So I think it's important for us to understand our body, for us to understand what's normal, what's usual for us, and really pay attention to our bodies so that we know, what our version of normal is. And if you're experiencing pain all the time, as Brenda said, the last thing on your mind is sex. And we're not cultured in the Caribbean to teach our males. Unfortunately, I hope that's changing, that, sex is not about you, it's about two people. And so conditions like endometriosis that cause energy and energy loss and fatigue means that the body prioritizes its survival over any kind of sexuality, any kind of sensuality. But unfortunately, women feel like they need to soldier on because this is what we've been cultured to do. So this is what ends up happening. But it does create a blockage, a barrier to intimacy and relationships in general, not just male and female relationships, intimate partner relationships, but relationships with friends, as Brenda has already said. So here are some of the emotional barriers. I will not labor on them because Brenda has already spoken so beautifully about them. But one of them is body image and struggles with your self-perception. Endobelly, things like endobelly, women having period poops, as I call them, period poops. When you have your period, sometimes you need to go to the bathroom a little bit more than you would like to. Your bladder might be affected. Women experience a lot of pelvic floor issues, things like urinal incontinence. When they sneeze or they cough too hard, they might leak a little bit because there's so much going on in your pelvic region. There's fear of rejection. Women struggle with this idea of changing partners to somebody who might be a little bit more supportive because they then have to explain themselves again that sex is an issue, and nobody wants to experience rejection because of that. And so there's an avoidance of intimacy altogether, or there's this idea of just carrying on going and hoping for the best. And there's a lot of guilt and self-blame. It's my fault. It's my issue. I need to deal with it. So we do need to break those stigmas. And it's important for us to navigate this guilt and resentment that we have, resentment of our own bodies, resentment of the fact that our bodies may not work like we want them to work, and recognize that that's okay. It's okay to not be okay sometimes. It's okay for us to it's not okay for us to experience such horrific things, but it's okay for us to not be in the mood to do certain things, as Brenda has said. And so we need to redefine how we connect with people. I want to talk about, and I know I'm going really quickly, so bear with me because of time. I just want to talk quickly about some statistics here. 70% of people who have, or women who have endometriosis, report that when they have a partner who's understanding and emotionally supportive, it has a positive impact on their ability to cope with their condition. And unfortunately, this is not often the case. You find this more in different cultures where partners are just more understanding. They understand that sex might be an issue. It might be off the table for large periods of the relationship, or sex might look like something different. Intimacy might look like something different. This is not common in our culture. I'm just calling a spade a spade. Listen, if I'm wrong, I'd love to know that I'm wrong, but it's not common in our culture. And at the same time, we have 50% of partners saying that they don't feel that they have enough information. So whose fault is that? Is it our fault that we're not telling our partners more? We're not explaining to them? Is it society's fault that they're not culturing partners, male partners specifically? Is it the government's fault? Whose fault is it? I think it's a collaborative effort that needs to be done. There needs to be a collaborative drive. Actually, doing this talk today has encouraged me. You know, a lot of times on my social media, I speak a lot to women, and I speak to men about men's issues. But I think it's time for us to start speaking to men about women's issues. And rather than just speaking to women, I think we need to call and convene a men's version of this endometriosis webinar so that men can understand what happens and they can feel like they're well informed. They can feel like they don't have to have this version of just saying, well, I don't understand, it's just a period. But we should inform them as well, because it's a really important part. And when it comes to intimacy specifically and sex, listen, if you're going to have sex with a man or a woman, they need to understand what you're going through, and they can't understand it because they don't have a lived experience. So it's important for us to share the information. I just want to leave you with a few bits about how we can practically navigate reconnecting with our own bodies. And Brenda has already mentioned some of them. The first one is body awareness and mindfulness practices, things like deep breathing, things like visualization, things like journaling, things like resting. Resting is an important one. If you have a faith, things like, you know, spending time with God, if that's what you believe, you know, meditating and thinking about things and having some kind of ritual for yourself is really, really important. Self-care is the number one way to manage. If you don't understand your own needs and your own body, and that includes intimately, you know, if you don't understand that, it's really difficult for you to translate that to someone else. Practicing non-penetrative intimacy. You know, in a lot of cultures, we have this idea that sex is penetration. Sex is only about what we call here in the UK, PIV, penis in vagina sex. Sex is so much more than that. And there is a need to redefine what sex is. And there is a need to redefine what our sense of pleasure is. You know, pleasure is not the responsibility of your partner. Pleasure is not some trophy that you get. Pleasure is a right for everyone, and pleasure is your responsibility. So it's important for us to understand our own body and understand that sex is not just about penetration. Sex is not just about, you know, that concept of insertion or that kind of intercourse. Sex is a lot more than that. A lot of pelvic floor therapy and somatic healing. Somatic just refers to the body, what happens here, what we're actually feeling, what we're actually sensing. And that's really important. There are a lot of online resources that are free about pelvic floor therapy. Of course, you can look at medications. I haven't spoken about traditional medication here. And there's an important need for us to rewrite the sexual narrative, as I spoke about before. Just looking at the fact of, you know, what is sex to me? What does it mean for me to feel and to be sexy? What does it mean and look like for me to be intimate with my partner and with myself? Do I understand what my pleasure is? Do I understand that, you know, I can experience pleasure without penetration? I can experience pleasure in all ways, and understanding that. There's also a really great need for, and I just want to flip back to pelvic floor therapy, massaging your yoni or massaging your vulva. A really great way to experience, you know, less discomfort is to just massage the tissue around your vulva and your perineum. That's a really great way to experience relief. Touch, especially your own personal touch, knowing what that feels like, is a very important thing. And even that is taboo. I'm mindful of that. So I hope that I've left you with some food for thought. I just want to let you know that you're not broken. I say this to my clients, you're not broken. And if you need therapy to deal with this, if you need help with this, it doesn't mean that you're broken or damaged. Your body is not the enemy. Healing is about learning new ways to connect with yourself. Definitely new ways for you to connect with love and for you to reclaim your own sense of pleasure. Pleasure is a right for everybody. It's not something that you have to earn. You know, pleasure is our responsibility. So I just want to leave you with that, and I hope it's given you some food for thought.
Thank you so much, Natalie. Amazing. The perspective, especially the sexual perspective in terms of endometriosis, I really want to reiterate some of the things that you said. Specifically, sex should not be painful. I know that is something that has been definitely culturalized in the Caribbean, that if it's painful, it's good, and you reinforcing that no, it's actually not supposed to be. It should be pleasurable, and that pleasure is a right for everyone. Might I add, pleasure is a right for every woman, and every woman should experience pleasure. I know, much like myself, other people have learned some new terms in terms of some of the things that you said, learning about the effects of vaginal dryness, even probably learning what the different parts of your vagina, what they're called, or what, these things are things that we are, some things that have been inaccurate for a long time that we've been taught. So righting those wrongs and correcting us and allowing us to learn how to reference certain parts of our bodies, but also understanding the connection to endometriosis and how if the body is in pain, it will prioritize survival, and we should prioritize that as well. Also, thank you so much to our two panelists who have brought the data in, have brought the evidence in terms of how 70% of women who have endometriosis have indicated that having a partner makes the experience, or rather having a supportive partner makes the experience of living with endometriosis a lot more manageable and easier. And this is just a personal opinion, but no, it is not our responsibility to inform anyone of the things that we go through. If they are interested and they love you enough, they will take it upon themselves to learn and to understand the health issues that you are experiencing. So thank you, Natalie. Thank you so much for all of the information that you've given us. And I will move on to our third and final panelist, Miss Oliviann Weeks. Oliviann hails from the community of Vidbouteille in Castries, St. Lucia. She attended the St. Joseph's Convent and later pursued her studies at the Sir Arthur Lewis Community College, where she earned a certificate in social work. Continuing her education, she enrolled in the UE Global Campus Social Work Program and graduated with first-class honors, earning a Bachelor's of Science in Social Work in 2024. Oliviann is deeply passionate about social work, gender equality, and advocating for sexual and reproductive health. Her dedication to these causes has led her to work as a social researcher, contributing her expertise to a variety of national, regional, and international organizations focused on social development projects. In addition to her professional work, Oliviann has volunteered with several organizations, including the St. Lucia National Youth Council and the St. Lucia Planned Parenthood Association, where she currently serves as Secretary of the Board of Directors to the St. Lucia Planned Parenthood Association. She is also the co-founder of Iyanola Wombmanhood, a nonprofit organization dedicated to raising awareness about reproductive health disorders. Oliviann also represents St. Lucia on the advisory committee of the Accra Regional Youth Network of the International Planned Parenthood Association. As a committed reproductive health advocate, Oliviann remains focused on furthering her education and personal growth as she continues her advocacy work in these critical areas. Over to you, Oliviann.
Hi, everyone. Good afternoon. So today I'm really just going to share my story as somebody who has endometriosis. I first experienced symptoms probably from my first period when I was about 8 years old. It was never how other people seem to have theirs. It was always very painful, very heavy. I was always out of school. It was so normal for me to skip school that I thought it should be the way for everyone, but my friends were going to school on their cycle. They might be a little sick, but they would go to school and be just fine. But I would be in the sick bay, or I would just be home for the first 2-3 days. And that was my normal. And so when I turned about 17, 18, I knew that I was going to enter the world of work, and I was like, okay, this can't go on. I need to see a doctor. I need to find a way for me to manage this, because whatever it is, it's just not right. And then that's when I actually went to a gynecologist, and I was diagnosed with endometriosis when I was about 17, 18. So a lot of people, it takes them at least like 10 years to get a diagnosis. So in my case, I actually got it early, but that did not change anything in terms of being able to get better treatment or anything like that. I tried different birth control to help with the pain, but all of these just made it extend for a longer period of time. So instead of having a cycle for a week, I'd probably, let's say if I start a birth control today, I would be bleeding until I stop it. I have no choice but to stop it because it wouldn't help the situation. I've been on microgyne, I've been on Depo-Provera, and these just never work for me. So later on, I would learn that, you know, these pills have estrogen in them. So it probably contributed to the hormonal imbalance and made things worse for me. And progesterone pills worked a lot better. I was not able to get quality care over the years. I've been trying to at least get a gynecologist to simply say, hey, we can help you. Let's have excision surgery to help you with the symptoms that you're experiencing. But the thing about endometriosis is that you go to a gynecologist, maybe based on symptoms, they might feel like, okay, yes, you have this disease, but then they would want to do imaging tests. So they might send you to do an ultrasound. And maybe if they're really like proactive and really trying to get to the bottom of everything, they might recommend an MRI. But most of them just recommended ultrasounds, which show that everything was normal. The most that it might show is that I have chocolate cysts, but it would just show like nothing's going on in the womb. But yet I have all these symptoms. I have heavy periods. I have migraines. I can see sometimes because of the migraines, I have migraine aura, and it just kept going on. And you know, because the imaging tests came back fairly normal, they were just like, okay, well, I mean, it's probably just in your head. You need to learn how to manage stress. And I never actually got any care. And I've probably been to all the gynecologists within the north of the island just to get better care. And that just never seemed to happen. But I kept advocating for myself, and I did find somebody who would listen to me. And as I learned more about endometriosis care, I learned that excision surgery, where they remove the endometriosis, is the best, is the gold standard for treatment. And so that's how I was able to get my first surgery in 2023. By the time I did that, just to backtrack a little bit, I became vegetarian in 2015. So this month actually is 10 years that I'm vegetarian. And that's what actually stopped me from being in the ER every single month because of cramps. I'm not exaggerating. Every month I would be at the hospital, or I'd have to go to the health center for a Voltaren injection because of pain. And when I changed my diet and I stopped eating meat, I also went gluten-free. I was actually feeling a little more normal, still painful, but I could have a better life, so to speak. But I mean, the condition progressed because I didn't have any surgery then. There's only so much that diet can do. And so in 2023, I got treatment in Trinidad, and I had surgery for it. The journey towards getting surgery was actually still difficult, trying to decide what is best, what works financially. And when I finally did have surgery, it did help me quite a bit. It helped with pain, because what happened at the time is that the pain was so severe, I was having trouble walking, moving around, just getting basic stuff done on a daily basis. And so actually my family had to organize for me to get somebody to drop me to and from work every day because I just could not walk. I was in a lot of pain all the time outside of my cycle. No matter what day it was, I would be in pain. And so when I had surgery, I had to make a difficult decision. At the time, the MRI results showed that it was deep infiltrating endometriosis, meaning I had it on my bladder, my bowels, my womb. It was just in that area. And they did not want to go into doing it they didn't want to go into the bladder or the bowel area. They seemed a bit hesitant. I suspected that it could have been to maybe lack of expertise, or perhaps, because it's such a ticklish area and so sensitive, they did not want to go further. And I thought to myself, well, I probably should wait and see maybe a specialist in the US that can do more. But at the time, since I was in such a dire situation with pain, I'm thinking to myself, if I don't do this, the adhesions would probably make it difficult for my organs to even recover. I may have to have this surgery, because what endo does, it fuses organs together. It affects the way the organ functions. And because of the MRI results, I was like, no, I need to do something now. And maybe later on, if I still need care, then go ahead and get that. So I made a difficult decision, and I told them I had to sign off on it, because they make you sign papers. Let them know that, okay, yes, just go into the womb, but they weren't gonna go further than that. So I did that, and that did give me my life back. So I'm back to being independent, doing what I need to do to take care of myself. But then the symptoms that I was experiencing actually continued. And this is where I get to the main part of the discussion here, which is bladder endometriosis. I first began to bladder endometriosis, basically endometriosis that's affecting the bladder, either growing on the bladder or growing into the organ. I first started to experience symptoms maybe in 2022, 2021, when I realized that I probably need to like urinate a little more than I normally would. My first incident, I should say, is when I was at the supermarket and I really felt like I couldn't hold it or anything. And then I rushed and I asked them to use their washroom, and they allowed me to. And that was a bit odd for me, because I'm like, that's strange. Why do I feel that way? Why did that happen? It's not like I drank so much water. What was that about? And so I went to the doctor thinking, maybe I have like a UTI or something. And I didn't at the time. And over the several months and a year or two into that, I would have had to have taken antibiotics, because there were one or two occasions where I did have a UTI, but most of the time it was just like getting the symptoms of a UTI without actually having it. So the symptoms would be the need to frequently urinate, pain when urinating, things like that. So it's almost like a fake UTI episode that keeps going and never actually stops. And so that continued. And when I went to have the surgery in 2023, by that time, the constipation had actually gotten worse. So I was experiencing both bladder endometriosis and bowel endometriosis. Bowel endometriosis, when it affects you, the bowel and the colon, and affects you in that way. And so when that happened, I found it difficult to have like bowel movements. So I would find myself frequently having to take like, up to this day, I still take like laxatives, supplements, probiotics every day to be able to have comfort. And if I don't do that, I'm at the point now where I will not be able to go. So instead of happening naturally, I have to take stuff to actually make that happen. And I feel like the bladder and the bowel endometriosis almost goes together in terms of symptoms, because if there's constipation, then that seems to affect urination. So it makes me like urinate more frequently. And so I've been dealing with these two things for a while now. With bladder endometriosis, ovulation tends to be very painful. So I feel the symptoms a lot more then, and it can make it very difficult to walk and to move around. And I've found a way to help myself with that by taking like cranberry. Cranberry works very well, like for UTIs. And so I thought to myself, well, if it works well for UTIs and my body always feels like it's having like a fake UTI, then it can probably help me. So I take a cranberry supplement every day, and I drink cranberry juice during ovulation just to make it a bit more bearable. And also the days leading up to my period, then I feel the pain. The pain is like flank pain, which is like the lower back area, on the like the right hand side, and now I feel it on the left hand side. And so I feel it mostly then. And it's usually like a dull ache. It never actually goes away. I even have it now, but it's managed with the use of those two things. I also noticed that during my menstrual cycle, I wouldn't necessarily have cramps per se, but the pain would be from the bladder endometriosis. And I did go to my doctor about it, and she did explain like that's exactly where the urinary tract would be. The pain that I described, it would be where the urinary tract is. And that's what I was experiencing. I actually did go on high blood pressure medication just to see if that would help with the pain, and also to protect my kidneys. And thankfully, as far as I know, the kidneys are not compromised, but I needed to go on that for a short period of time to see if it helped, but it didn't. So I went off of it. The reality about this disease is that endometriosis can go everywhere and anywhere. So wherever it grows, it causes symptoms, and you need treatment by a specialist within that area. So if the blood endometriosis requires the use of the help of a urologist, but not just any urologist, but a urologist who specializes in endometriosis. The difficulty in St. Lucia is that the specialists here, they well, not just in Lucia, but generally, they focus on prostrate issues. So they focus more on how men are affected, their bladder and whatnot. But when it's a woman, they refer to a gynecologist for that issue. So it was difficult to even get somebody that could help. And when they did, I was asked to do a procedure overseas. And I did a cystoscopy here, which is examining the bladder. Everything was normal. And I was asked to do a urodynamic study in Martinique, but I was not successful in actually getting that done because there was some civil unrest at the time, and to this day I have not gotten it. So it's been quite a journey. It's been quite a journey figuring this out, dealing with it. But it's not all bleak. Because like I said, the way that I manage it, it's with the cranberry. And I also do something called yoni steaming, which is vaginal steaming. It helps a lot with that. I also have realized that it has affected me in terms of my blood pressure. So because of the blood endometriosis, it results in me being dehydrated. So it makes me urinate a lot, like all throughout the day. I have to plan my day, my activities, my life around my bladder and my fluid intake, which is, as you can imagine, very exhausting. So a typical day, I know I have to get to work for 9 o'clock, but I have to be up by 4 o'clock because I need to go through my whole routine to get relief from constipation, which requires me to drink a lot of water and fluid, but then that affects the bladder. So then I need to like urinate a lot before I actually leave home. So much so that I count how many times I need to go before it's safe to leave the house, because I know that every 15 minutes I need to find a bathroom. So that has been very exhausting. And it's just part of what I need to do now, or have been doing for the past year or two, just to be able to manage with this and still, live a normal life. The other things that I have used to cope, I've used this supplement called Alive that has helped me a lot, and probably the only thing in such a long time that has given me more of a glimmer of hope. So basically, when I take this supplement daily, I realized that I would still need to go frequently. I still need to use it frequently, but it's spaced out. So instead of going every 15 minutes, I can go every 30 minutes or even every hour. So that way I have time, leave my house and get to work or wherever it is I need to go. So that makes it a lot easier for me and less stressful. Let's see, the emotional effects of it. Well, that has caused me a lot of anxiety. Just planning my day meticulously. It makes me very anxious. And if, for whatever reason I'm off, like maybe I woke up late because I was tired or something like that, when I actually get up and I get going, I feel really, really stressed out and anxious because I know that it will have a ripple effect on my entire day. I get to work late, then that sets me back on my activities for the day, productivity. And the world is not designed to cater to you, especially when you have endometriosis. So you're still expected to meet the same milestones, the same goals, you still have your deadlines to meet, and you just have to fit your health and wellness in between all of that. So it has caused me a lot of anxiety, and the way that I manage that is by meditating. And I also go walking. Walking literally helps because I'm literally like walking it out. All the anxious thoughts that I may be having regarding my health, I just go walking for about an hour or two, and then that tends to calm it down. So that's a summary of what has happened with it. The other aspect of bladder endometriosis that I wanted to mention is that because of the frequent urination, I got a lot of dizzy spells. So I would have like blackouts, or sometimes at home, I would feel like when a episode is starting, where I'm getting very dizzy, and I would just go lie down. I'll probably wake up like an hour or two later. And I know that's because my pressure was very low. So what I started doing was having hydration salts, because I figure when you're dehydrated, that's what they give you in the hospital or wherever you are. And so I started to have them. I started to have them every day. And then I spoke to my doctor about it. I told her what I was using to help me. And so then she put me on a regime where I have a full pack of hydration salts twice a week, and every day I have half a pack. And since then, I have not been having dizzy spells or fainting spells. I also drink a lot of coconut water. The electrolytes in that help me. So yeah, these are some of the methods. There's some of the strategies that I've used to cope with it. I also know that cold showers help a lot with the pain, since the pain is it's almost like a burning pain on my right side or my left side. But when I have like a ice cold shower or I use an ice pack, that actually reduces the pain, soothes the area. But I cannot do it during my period because it's like, I think it's like too cold. So I don't use the ice pack. I would just have a cold shower and rest and more rest. Resting is crucial. When I get home, have a shower, bed. It could be 6 o'clock in the evening, I go to bed. Because I'm always really, really, really tired from just managing everything and managing that throughout the day. So in essence, this is what it is. Yeah, the treatments for what I've used for bladder endometriosis would be like I said, the supplements, the cranberry, the ice packs, the hydration salts, the coconut water, and rest. Thanks God for Netflix. Netflix has probably saved me from depression and from being totally, isolated at home, because I spend so much time at home now. I don't want to like go out, because going out means having to figure out the availability of bathrooms, factor in my fluid intake with traffic. It's not worth it. So because of all that, I'm actually in the process of preparing to have another operation, begin to put things in place, research the doctors, and that sort of thing. I have also tried physiotherapy, but again, physiotherapists down here, they don't know too much about endometriosis, and I pretty much gave up on that because what they offered as a treatment were things that I've already tried that didn't work. And I got a bit exhausted with trying to with having to teach everybody that I deal with about the disease. I feel like if you're a medical professional, it would be nice if you at least have heard of the term endometriosis, but many of them, especially in that field, have not. So yeah, in essence, that is it. In terms of my endometriosis journey and where I'm at now.
Thank you so much, Oliviann, for sharing your story, sharing your journey, a very, very complex and complicated journey that you're still on. And before I say anything else, I wish you success in terms of your second surgery. I hope that everything goes well. But your story definitely reinforced a lot of what was mentioned prior to you in terms of how you cope, the strategies that you use to deal with endo, both physically, emotionally, and mentally. And it really definitely gave us more insight into the personal experiences of endo warriors and endo survivors, how complex it is, and the various steps that you have to take just to prepare yourself on the morning to get to work, the time that you need to wake up, the things that you need to do to calculate, the supplements that you need to take, in order to keep your body hydrated, in order to keep your body stable. And that being an everyday, every minute, every second fight, that being a whole body fight. And I commend you in terms of being strong and being able to survive this disease that it has really affected your life really from a young age. And if you're in the audience and you're an endo survivor, I know our panelists indicated that they were endo survivors. We definitely salute you in terms of your ability to be able to navigate and live with these diseases and how complicated and complex they can be every single day. And if you're not a survivor, but you know someone who has endometriosis, we encourage you to be more supportive. We encourage you to provide care. We encourage you to work with the people in your families and in your circles to help support them in any way that you can. Thank you so much, Oliviann. And we are going to transition now to Q&A. If you do have any questions and you did not put them in the chat, I've been observing the chat. There aren't any questions right now. But if you do have any questions that you want to ask right now, please feel free to unmute yourself and ask. There's no hierarchy here. You can present your question to the panelists, or a question that you want to have a general discussion about. You can go ahead and do so. I'll give you guys a few minutes, and if not, then we can transition to the next aspect of this webinar. Or if you have a comment, there was a comment earlier from Zola, and Zola stated, this isn't a question, but I often wonder how many of our mothers, sisters, aunts, grandmothers, etc. have suffered, and due to cultural taboos or the lack of knowledge, went unnoticed and untreated or wrongfully treated for all these years. And it's so true. It's really a silent disease that a lot of women have suffered with. I have encountered women who are much older than me, old enough to be my own mother, who have suffered with endometriosis for years on end. And we know that now, really now is the time that a lot of information is being dispersed and being made available about the disease. But as Oliviann stated, even a lot of our medical professionals have no idea how to deal with, nor how to consult their clients and their patients on the disease of endometriosis. So we know that a lot of women have been left in the back. A lot of women have been left without the knowledge and the tools to deal with endometriosis. And we know that a lot more needs to be done in terms of advocacy, in terms of policies, in terms of tools and techniques that we need to equip women with to deal with diseases, reproductive diseases like endometriosis, that is still very much it's still very much like unknown, and our professionals are not very equipped to let us know how to deal with them. We have a comment from Sasha Lee Pierre-Louis. Very brave and open to Oliviann for sharing this experience. If anyone else has any comments or questions, now is the time to present those questions or comments. I do want to also reiterate that we have been constantly posting information in terms of brochures, in terms of informative posts on our Instagram and our social media pages. So a lot of what has been said here, you can find that information on our social media as well at Iyanola Wombmanhood. And if we don't have any other questions, I will now transition to our closing remarks by our secretary, Ms. Shanice Everest Popo. Over to you, Shanice.
Good afternoon, everyone. On behalf of Iyanola Wombmanhood, I would like to extend our heartfelt gratitude to everyone who made this Iyanola Wombmanhood webinar on endometriosis a success. First, to our esteemed panelists, Mrs. Natalie Green, Ms. Brenda Roach, and our very own Oliviann Wicks. I would like to say thank you to all of you for your generous sharing, your knowledge, your expertise, and your personal experiences. Your insights have provided valuable awareness and guidance on this important topic, this important illness that a lot of us women face. And we truly appreciate your time and your dedication. A special thank you as well to our organizers of this event, for bringing us together and creating a space for education, empowerment, and open conversation. Your efforts in planning and coordinating this webinar have made a meaningful impact. Special thanks as well to all the participants and listeners. Your engagement, questions, and willingness to be a part of this discussion have made this session even more enriching. Awareness and advocacy thrive when we all, of course, come together, and your presence today is a testimony or a testament to that. This webinar has been truly informative and enlightening. Let us remember, I'm looking at the points that I wrote down on this paper. Let us remember how important it is to treat our whole body as persons who suffer with, well, endometriosis and other reproductive health problems, taking care of our minds, our spirits, and having healthy relationships as well. Thank you once again, everyone. And we look forward to more opportunities such as this one to learn and grow together. Thank you on behalf of Iyanola Wombmanhood.
Thank you, Shanice. Thank you so much for these closing remarks. Before we leave, I know that you have the liberty to keep your cameras on or off. If you do want to turn it on so that we can see everybody's pretty faces, that would be amazing. If you don't, you have all the right not to. On that note, thank you once again, everyone, for joining us on this Sunday afternoon, to our presenters for such interesting and thoughtful presentations. Thank you to Iyanola Wombmanhood for creating this amazing community and giving us all a space to share our experiences in a meaningful and positive way. Now, there's one more week left in Endo month, and no, this is not our final event. We will be having a pop-up, excuse me, on Saturday, March 29th, 2025, from 10 a.m. to 4 p.m. If you're in St. Lucia during that time, it will be at the Baywalk Mall on the ground floor, corridor, by the supermarket wall. We will be having a special guest, Miss Charlotte Byrne from the Natural Fertility Center, St. Lucia. We will also be having some informational charts, brochures, endo-themed keyrings, stickers, and more. So we encourage you to please come, connect, and support the endo community. If you're interested in keeping up with us, with Iyanola Wombmanhood, please follow us on Facebook and Instagram. Follow Iyanola Wombmanhood on Facebook and Instagram. Just saying that again, if you didn't catch that, we know everybody has a social media page nowadays. So Facebook and Instagram, and the name is Iyanola_Wombmanhood. On that note, thank you again. Let me just see what's in the chat before I close off. Yes, so thank you to everyone who has shared, who has come in. Sorry, thank you to our panelists. Please support the people around you. Support women, especially women that are suffering from reproductive diseases. It is not an easy fight. It is not an easy journey, and women need as much support as any other group would need. We are one of the most marginalized, if not the most marginalized group, and so women are, we need that support in terms of reproductive diseases and fighting every day to just live a normal life. So thank you, everyone. Thank you for coming in and for joining us. And please come back next year when we have this again, because we will. And if you're in St. Lucia on March 29th, please come to our pop-up shop. Thank you.
Yes, and we want to take
the rest of your Sunday.
We want to take a quick picture so everybody with their Colgate smiles. Everybody say cheese. Okay, thank you so much. Thank you again to our panelists, our guests, and to the Endo warriors who, despite your own issues, I think that's one thing I want to celebrate today, that despite their own issues, their own struggles, that you all were able to dig deep. And it's very interesting that all the Endo survivors that we have So it says a lot that even if that you're experiencing your purpose and your dreams, the reason I'm in the space that we have to go, I actually see US, and it's actually an Endo warrior, our president who actually introduced me to the space, and that's how I was able to overcome some of the struggles that I faced with PCOS. So a shout out